Good morning, students. So today we are going to see about the last chapter of the fourth module, that is web security services. So in this, first we'll see the introduction part and then we'll go for the definition of a web service. The emergence of a web in 1993 has helped change the way millions of users shop, bank and pay their bills. Around the clock availability of the web, the interactive nature of the web applications, and the personalized nature of experience on sub websites have all played a role in providing unprecedented convenience to the customer. The earliest web applications used Java servlets or JSP, that is Java Server Pages, or ASP, that is Active Server Pages on the Microsoft platform. The scalability and reusability together with support for transaction processing security was provided by the next generation of component-based web technologies such as J2EE and .NET. So many of the earlier web applications such as internet banking involved human to program interaction. However, there are some applications such as supply chain management which is differ from traditional web applications in several significant respects. In that first one, programs communicate with each other over the web with little or no human intervention. Services might have a composite nature. There are potentially a large number of atomic service providers offering a given service. So a client have a choice and can dynamically change providers. Client and providers may be running applications using different web technologies on diverse computing platforms with different operating systems. Hence, interoperability is thus an important issue. So the common term used to identify web applications which share some of or all of the above features just now, whatever we have discussed, is called as a web service. So the WWW, that is World Wide Web Consortium, defines a web service as a software system identified by a URI. URI is nothing but Uniform Resource Identifier, whose public interfaces and bindings are defined and described by XML. So these systems may then interact with the web service in a manner prescribed by its definitions using XML-based messages conveyed by Internet Protocol. So as I have told, there is a one feature of a that is supply chain management service is a atomic service. So this atomic web service involves main three entities. Now if you see here, the first one is a provider, then a requester, and a registry. The requester is nothing but a client, the provider is nothing but a server, and a registry. So as if you see the role of each three, we'll see the providers register or publish their services in a public registry. So this is what a first thing. Now if you see over here, service provider first publishes its services, what it can provide, to the registry. Second one, it's a requesters, nothing but a clients, discover services by querying the registry for services that match certain criteria. Once a requester has identified a provider whose service it needs, it binds to and invokes the service of that provider. So now if you see here, first the service provider publishes its services to the registry, then a service requester discovers what are the services are available in this registry, so that whenever it needs, it can get those services by querying them. Once it knows, then these services are going to bind to the service provider. So this is what exactly the entities which are involved in a web service. So the technologies to support web services are all based on XML, that is Extended Markup Language. which has become the most important feature for the electronic documents. XML and the technologies that support web services are going to be discussed in this next session. So the first one, it's a XML. So XML is a meta markup language for text document or textual data. So remember, this markup language is going to use tags as a mechanism to identify structures in a document or to specify presentation style or a format. XML allows to define languages or applications to represent text documents or textual data. It is easy to understand for human users. It is very expressive, semantics along with the data, well structured, easy to read and write from programs. So some of the possible advantages of using a XML are, it is truly portable data, means easily the data can be moved from one application to another application. It easily readable by human users, very expressive, very flexible and customizable as there is no finite tag set available, easy to use from programs, libraries available, easy to convert into other representations, XML transformation languages are available, many additional standards and tools are available and widely used and supported. So these are the possible advantages of using the XML. Now we'll see how exactly we can go for writing the XML document. So this XML document consists of the following parts. First one, we call it as the elements, attributes, and plus some other details. So we'll see in detail this, what exactly the elements in XML documents are. As these are freely definable, so these elements are represented by using the tags, that is article, title, author. So this is one example we have taken it here with a start tag, which is included within a pair of angle brackets, and an end tag, which is again included within a pair of angle brackets with this forward slash symbol. Then elements have a name, that is article in this case, and it may have the content also, and then the article is going to end. So elements may be nested, elements may be empty. Each XML document has exactly one root element and forms a tree. So now this is what example. So we have defined an article, then in that article there are some other sub elements also, say author. So then we have given the name of the author, Gerhard Peckham. Title, the web in 10 years, end of the title and the end of the article. So this is a one element example of a XML. Now if you see another simple example of a XML document, so article, then author, title, then we have another element called as a text. In that we have taken another subtext, that is abstract, in order to evolve end of the abstract, section number, one, title, introduction, then the index provides the universal end of the section, end of a text, end of a article. So these are what the tags which we can use in a XML document. Now if you see here, article, author, abstract, index, these are the freely designed tags. Now if you see the text, then it is going to have a start tag which is included within a pair of angle brackets. Then it's going to have an end tag which is going to end with this forward slash there followed by the name of the tag. Then so whatever the green color area you're going to see, that is called as the element part, and the element can have the sub elements or a text or it a content, so that is included in this blue color box. So this is nothing but content of the elements, that is sub elements and or text you can have in that. Then elements can have attributes with name and a value pair. So now if you see, there is another element called as a section which is going to have a name as a number with a value as a 1, title is a name and introduction is a value for that attribute. So elements may have attributes that have a name and a value. For example, section number is equal to 1. So then what is the difference between elements and attributes? Only one attribute within a given name per element. But it may have an arbitrary number of sub-elements. Attributes have no structure, it's simply a strings, while elements can have sub-elements. So as a rule of thumb, content we can include inside the element, and the metadata, that is information about the data, we are going to include it inside the attributes. For example, person born on so and so date, died on so and so date, Alan Turing. So this is what exactly the difference between element and the attribute. So if you represent the XML document in the order tree format, it will be like this. So we have an article, element, then we have an author, another element, then what is the value we have assigned to that, then the title, the web in 10 years, then article is going to have another element called as a text, which is going to have the content as abstract section, which are nothing but again sub elements, then index, then the information. The section is going to have the name and a value as attributes. Section name is a number having a value as a 1, title, introduction as its value. Then well-formed XML documents must adhere to the following rules. Every start tag has a matching end tag. Elements may nest but must not overlap. There must be exactly one root element. Attribute values must be quoted. An element may not have two attributes with the same name. Comments and processing instructions may not appear inside the tags. So these are the rules we need to follow while writing the XML document. Then there is another, we call it as a namespace syntax. Now if you see here, so DBS colon book XML-NS, XML-NS is nothing but namespace definition happens over here, colon DBS equal to HTTP colon www/dbs/dash. So now if you see here, this DBS and a DBS nothing but prefix as an abbreviation of a URI, then XML-NS signals that namespace definition happens, and this is a URI, unique URI to identify the namespace. So in this you will be able to get the information about the namespace. XML schema basics. So a document type definition, or more recently standardized XML schema, contains rules to interpret the document's content. The rules includes, it provides the simple types like string, integer, date, time, duration, language, etc. It allows defining possible values for elements, allows defining types derived from the existing types, allows defining complex types, allows posing constraints on the occurrence of elements, allows forcing uniqueness and foreign keys. So based on that, we have to go for writing a XML application, which we call it as a XML schema, by following these rules. So now if you see here the same example, so section is going to a sub element which is going to have a attributes as a name, as number, and a title. These are the attributes and their values are 1 and an introduction. Then comes what exactly a SOAP is. A SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. Simple Object Access Protocol. So this is a framework for exchanging structured information over the internet. The SOAP protocol defines a one-way message transfer between two entities. One-way message transfer between two entities. SOAP can be used over any transfer protocol such as TCP, HTTP, SMTP. It defines a model for processing individual one-way messages. The mapping between SOAP message and an underlying transfer protocol is referred to as a SOAP binding. SOAP may run on top of the HTTP or SMTP. Then the SOAP message is an XML document made up of an envelope that is called as a SOAP envelope, which includes an optional SOAP header and a body. A body is a mandatory part, whereas header is optional part. The SOAP header is a generic container for control information. Header blocks should contain information that influences payload processing. As it's optional, you may skip it. SOAP body element represents the message payload. So now here we can see the example of SOAP message in HTTP post request and post response format, which will be used between the client and a server. Okay, now if you see over here, the version number is a 1.0. So as I told, it is made up of an envelope. Envelope consists of two parts. One is the optional header part as well as the body part. As body is a mandatory, we are going to get this information, XML and S. So now I want to get the stock information. So let me know what exactly the today's price money of the particular stock, then end of the body, end of the envelope. In the same way, we have a response format where in the envelope it is going to give you the URI where you'll be able to get that information. Then what is exactly the price of that stock, that is 3847. Based on that, it will send you the response. Next, it's a web service definition language, and it is an XML format for describing network services, as a set contains information where the service is located, what the service does, and how to invoke the service as a types, message, operation, port types, and bindings. Operations and bindings. At the heart of a web service description is a port type, which specifies one or more operations within its scope. An operation is an abstract definition of an action. It involves one or more messages. For example, an operation can receive a message that needs no response, or it can send a notification message. An operation receives a request and sends a response. A message is an abstract definition of a data being exchanged as part of the operation. Messages may have multiple parts. Each part has an associated type. Now the following figure shows the port type, which comprises a single operation involving two messages, a request and a response. Now if you see here, message name is a message 1, a part name, a type what exactly it is, then a message 2, then operation name you need to specify over here. Message 1 is the input, whereas message 2 is the output. So based on that, it performs the kind of operation which comprising two messages. In addition to specifying the messages within an operation and the operations within a port type, WSDL permits the web service developer to indicate the specific communication protocols to be used in support for each operation. This is referred to as binding. Permissible binding includes SOAP, HTTP post, HTTP GET. So what exactly? The type of protocol you should use it to have a communication in support of each operation, that you can specify by using these protocol names. The next one, it's a UDDI, that is Universal Description, Discovery and Integrity. It is a registry or a catalog that allows businesses across the globe to list themselves in internet. Prospective clients discover web services by querying the registry for specific services using SOAP messages. In response, they are provided access to the WSDL that describes the operation, messages, and protocols for the desired web services. The registry includes the equivalent of white, yellow, and green pages of the telephone directory. White pages provides address and contact information of a service. Yellow pages provide an industrial categorization of the service, and the green pages provide the information about the service that the business exposes. So this is what the today's lecture of the web service securities. So further part we'll see in the next lecture.